He is Damon and Amendolara of the DA Show on CBS Sports Radio. And catch him on Sirius XM 206 Eastern Time. And I'm going to start with Eastern Time because that's where you are. The show goes 6 to 10. So here, San Antonio, 5 a.m. And throughout South Texas, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. At Twitter, he's at DA on CBS. The Last Dance documentary. It's brought Jordan, it's brought the Bulls, that dynasty, back into the limelight. And you know, we've heard a lot of talk about the documentary itself.
The filmmaking of this documentary has been exquisite. I think the soundtrack, how modern it has felt looking back at 90s and 80s basketball has been the perfect, it struck the perfect note. It has the perfect audience right now. And no matter what, Michael Jordan is an amazing central figure. I mean, just as the lead actor in anything, Jordan has so much that's charismatic and magnetic. My biggest gripe with this has not been that people have overly romanticized the 90s. My problem with it has been that I think it's Jordan's viewpoint of Jordan's legacy. And I realize there's a reality here that you can't escape, and that is he had to green light this. The only way it was going to be made was if Michael Jordan said yes to the director and yes to the footage being used. So ultimately it's going to be through a certain lens. But everything that we've seen through 6 episodes has basically continued to elevate Michael to a different level as an icon. And that's not what three-dimensional human beings really are. I mean, you know, his gambling addiction, whether he was apolitical or not about important issues, whether he was a difficult teammate, whether he got coaches fired, whether he was personal with some things like Isaiah Thomas, the Dream Team. In all these instances, Michael has basically waved him off, not a big deal. That was just who I was at that time. I didn't do it. I didn't freeze out Isaiah Thomas. That wasn't me. And when you don't have the filmmaker pushing back on that narrative, it just becomes Michael's version of the events. And I am hoping with episodes 7 and 8 that when they delve into the first retirement and his foray into minor league baseball, that there is a true discussion or exploration about whether it was just burnout or whether there was something more like gambling or something else in his life. But I don't know if we're going to get that because, again, I don't see a lot of contrition, regret, or some type of exposure of things we didn't know that could be uncomfortable. It mainly is Jordan was amazing. He hated Jerry Krause. Krause ruined the Bulls. Rodman was eclectic. And Michael was cutthroat. Well, that's not really breaking a lot of new ground.
True. And I asked the same thing. And I even asked in another discussion we had relative to The Last Dance earlier this week, I asked, are they going to get into the rumors about how his father's murder had something to do with his gambling troubles? Now, I don't think I'm doing any injustice by going on and spreading any further rumors. My whole point is I don't know. And I think you have to go with the path of, well, there's no real hard evidence there, so it's just speculation. I'm completely saying that. But you can't go back and look at that retirement in 93 and just simply say he was burned out because to me, DA, this is the thing that doesn't make sense. What separated Jordan from everybody else, maybe every other athlete in modern history, that drive, that determination, that it wasn't enough to beat you, I had to put my foot on your throat and embarrass you. All of a sudden, that mindset just switches off and you're burned out. Like, the two don't compute. It doesn't make any sense. Now, maybe he was just burned out, and none of us know what it's like to not be able to go to the grocery store without being mobbed by, like, I get that aspect of it, and I fully realize I've never been in that situation, but this narrative and this myth, maybe even greater than this talent that's been built around MJ about his competitive nature, to be able to say, oh yeah, but he was able to turn it off in 1993, like how that doesn't make much sense. So I'm with you. I do hope that some exploration happens, although to your point about it being through MJ's eyes, I don't think we're going to get it. They might touch on it. I don't think we're going to get anything more than maybe a soundbite or two from somebody who was close to him or somebody who was one of the higher ups in the NBA, and then we're moving on to the next thing.
And we kind of have those breadcrumbs already by how they tackle the gambling addiction and how being apolitical was the first crack in the facade of MJ's armor, because how the filmmakers set it up, and this is a bit of a sleight of hand by the filmmakers, is present the evidence at the time through the media's reaction. Okay, so here are news stories, anchors, sports talk radio, writers writing about it. Zap to current time, Michael waves it off. Not a big deal. Didn't affect me. I wasn't out late that night. It didn't affect my basketball. Much ado about nothing. Well, so then your counterpoint is whatever's being said now has the truth. Whatever's being said then gets painted as hysteria of the time, right? It was an overreaction of the time. What you need is the counterbalance of somebody today saying, no, I was there and it was a problem. No, I saw this affect Michael's. I saw it affect his basketball. I saw what this did. His mom has sat down for this documentary. She wasn't quoted about how gambling affected his life. His wife, Juanita, is married to him at this entire time. She's not filmed. She didn't sit down for this interview. We have nobody that was close to him that can push back and say, no, Michael might say it was a big deal, but we saw it was a big deal. Or if his mom said it wasn't a big deal, there is a validity that could be given to Michael's version of events. But the breadcrumbs suggest from the previous episodes that a deep exploration or a pushback on Michael's narrative about why he retired is unfortunately probably not going to happen.